A wise old fish dragon once said, "It may not be the way of the times anymore, but death is what truly completes a person." Which is morbid and stuff, but I don't think any of us could have imagined just how significant this statement would be. Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam, and look, right away, this is going to be a spoiler for anime-only watchers. And to be honest, good luck avoiding this one for the next year because it is massive, massive news, and we need to talk about it, so we're going to. So there's your warning. The dude is here, the dude meaning Joy Boy, that is. We don't know how or why, or most importantly, why he's covered in miscellaneous goop. It's very end of Evangelion, really. But while we know disgustingly little about the specifics of the scenario, at least one big revelation has occurred, which ties everything together. Okay, so everything that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but Luffy, Joy Boy, the Sun God, and very intriguingly, Kaido. Oh, and the will of D, that's very important, because I think we've now solved a mystery that we've had since the very first chapter of the series. And it's all thanks to TOAST, Potato, and Don Quixote Don't Flamingo, all of which cleared their mind brains via the act of subscribing to the Grand Line Review, which will result in consistent injections of One Piece culture being administered directly into your YouTube feed. And if you'd like to be our next subscriber of the day, then hit the button and please do say hi in the comments below if you are a new member of the Grand Fleet. Welcome! Alright, so to unravel this whole Joy Boy deal, we need to answer 3 questions. 1, what is happening in this here panel? 2, why is what is happening? And 3, why is it specifically happening on Wano against Kaido? That third question there is surprisingly important, so let's get to work. I mentioned this in my chapter review of 1043, but with Luffy's recent fall and perhaps resurrection, it becomes very clear that Wano is exploring a motif of death and rebirth. Now, to be fair, this motif isn't anything new to One Piece. The series has always been about the living carrying on the wills of the departed. However, Wano has taken things a step further, and we can see this demonstrated quite powerfully within our monster trio, consisting of Mosshead, Mophead, and Hathead. During Onigashima, each and every one of them have been pushed closer to death than ever before. Sanji, I suppose, in a more metaphorical manner, he faced the fear of losing the person he was and being reborn as something monstrous, but as a result, he evolved and became something much greater. Zoro has a similar situation happening as we speak, potentially being confronted by a literal Grim Reaper, or at the very least having quite the serious chit-chat with the current king of hell himself, Enma. And of course he's going to come out of this trial significantly stronger as a result of being a badass sword dude. And then we have Luffy, someone who was thought to have quite literally died due to his voice having disappeared, and honestly, he may still have, but right now what we're looking at is some kind of very Joy Boy based resurrection. So now I want to go back to the words of Kaido. It may not be the way of the times anymore, but death is what truly completes a person. And who would have thought that such an evil old fish could be so wise? Because a form of death did go on to complete Sanji. After an entire life's worth of physical rejection, his body is now well and truly active with Germa-based goodness. And combined with Sanji's philosophy, personality, life experience, and existing abilities, he's looking pretty damn complete right now. Zoro's experiences wielding a sword named after the King of Hell led to unlocking his Conqueror's Haki, and who knows what other benefits are going to spawn from his intimate tryst with death. But Zoro is already more complete as a result. And with Luffy, I think the connection between death and rebirth is now a little bit obvious. But something that we're very much neglecting is where good old K-Dogs fits into all of this. Because death is a fairly intrinsic part of his character. In fact, for most of the series, it's been his defining character trait, the fact that he wants to die but can't. And that trait has puzzled us, and by us, I might just mean me. It's puzzled me for quite some time. At first, it was believed that he was just so depressed due to tragic circumstances that he wanted to end himself as well as take the entire world with him. But Kaido's words in Onigashima later led to the impression that he wanted to die for some form of glory, to have a memorable death in an almost ritualistic manner, to achieve some kind of ultimate satisfaction. Or maybe even a bit of selfishness in regards to wanting to build a legacy, like how Kaido accused Whitebeard of dying correctly and such. But I no longer think that either of those are true. Kaido isn't looking to die for the sake of dying. He's looking to die for the sake of resurrection. In recent chapters, the Kaido Joy Boy Connection has been made quite clear. Whether it was King's doing or not, it has been heavily implied that Kaido wanted to become the fated Joy Boy, and almost everything he's done has been in service of that goal. Striving to be the Pirate King being a pretty great start, but also specifically taking over Wano where Joy Boy was prophesied to return. But somewhere along the line, things did get heavily twisted, and Kaido became a sort of anti-Joy Boy, an obsessive Oni, a depressed dragon, and of course, a very sad salmon. But even even with that in mind, he never quite stopped trying to achieve his goal, which is why at any given moment he's always looking for a new and creative way to try and kill himself, which is, well, it's just such a magnificent irony. To achieve his dream of becoming Joy Boy, Kaido has to die. However, he just so happens to be born with one of the two bodies in the world that are nigh on completely invulnerable, even when jumping off a sky island. And speaking of, these word things from the narrator are very retrospectively powerful. The man claimed that he was searching for a place to die. He had tasted defeat as a pirate on 7 occasions, and been caught by the Navy or enemy no less than 18 times. He was sentenced to death 40 times, but none of those people were able to kill him, and that included he himself. Kaido has been such an enigma for so long. How can someone so powerful have been caught that many times? Well, an easy explanation is that he just let it happen. In his quest to become Joy Boy, he relentlessly sought out death in as many ways as possible. But when they all ultimately failed to kill him, Kaido gave up, escaped, and moved on. And so he was never able to achieve something that each and every member of the D-Clan could, which was that trademark death smile. Let's bring this back now because I could get lost in Kaido speculation for ages and ages and ages. He's a surprisingly interesting fish. But this whole situation has very potentially answered one of our Will of D mysteries. The reason why every D dies with a smile on their faces. Because in that moment, it is the will or perhaps even spirit of Joy Boy coming through to leave that one last haunting impression on those who believe that they've rid the world of this clan. And this is getting slightly insane now, but there's no reason why it has to be Joy Boy either. Each Will of D member could carry the will or spirit of any number of past clan members, each of which play their part and conclude with the trademark smile. And this can also include special guest stars such as Kozuki Oden. Here's an interesting thing though. I'm sure that many of you will have stumbled upon this by now, but did you know that Joy Boy was partially inspired by a West Indian character also named Joy Boy? Joy Boy smiles perpetually at all the foibles and problems of mankind and cures human troubles by tapping out an irresistible rhythm on his drum. I will say that the origins of Joy Boy are, they're quite contentious. It's difficult to find reference to this character outside of this one book called The Encyclopedia of Things That Never Were, which doesn't give me a lot of confidence that it was a thing that was. But regardless of the origin of the legend itself, this fits the One Piece incarnation of Joy Boy like skinny jeans on slightly too thick thighs. Incredibly tightly, and we can now see a lot more than was ever intended. In particular, I want to linger on the line of tapping out an irresistible rhythm on his drum, because drums were mentioned by Zunesha, or a drum beat, and in chapter 1043 we also hear this sound through the wonders of Japanese onomatopoeia. And very appropriately, it happens to be the exact same sound effect that was used at the Sky Pier party. You know, the one where Luffy's silhouette looks almost exactly like the sun god Nika. Back to Joy Boy though, his focus on music is also fascinating because in the early days of One Piece, that is exactly what this here Luffy was gunning for as well. Remember that early East Blue gag about Luffy always prioritizing having a musician on the crew before any of the more essential roles, you know, the ones that keep us alive, like doctors and chefs? Well, that desire for a musician is starting to make an awful lot of sense in more profound ways than it ever had any right to be. Because if Joy Boy's role is to cure human troubles through music, then access to the music would be a pretty primary concern. And speaking of music, now is probably a good time to mention Bink Sake, a seemingly innocuous song that has had something of a resurgence in recent times, because, to be perfectly frank, it may very well spoil all of One Piece. And right now, Wano is playing out beat for beat with this specific verse. Now comes a storm through the far-off sky. Now the waves are dancing, beat upon the drums. If you lose your nerve, this breath could be your last, but if you hold on, the morning sun will rise. That is exactly what's happening right now. A storm is coming through the far-off sky to the people of Wano. The waves are certainly dancing, in the way that waves do, and we've now got beating drums as well. Luffy did not lose his nerve, and so this breath wasn't his last. He's holding on, and now the sun will rise, both metaphorically and literally. The presence of Joy Boy is a metaphorical sunrise. With the whole it's always darkest before dawn approach to storytelling, and Onigashima is going to end with a morning sunrise after this night-long raid. And there's a lot more to Bink Sake than just that. In fact, it could quite literally be telling us the rest of the story of One Piece, but I do want to stay focused on Joy Boy for this video. Because now that we know why this is happening, and in particular why it's happening in regards to Kaido, we now need to answer the significantly more bizarre question of what the crap is happening here. And I hate doing stuff like this, but Oda, he may very well have already given us the answer, and quite recently as well. In the color spread for chapter 1039, we see a crowned Munke rather intently pointing at some globs of sap or amber, whatever this miscellaneous yellow stuff ends up being, which did spawn all sorts of crazy theories, as all color spreads tend to do. People read way too much into them, but on this occasion, those people have earned a very rare W, because our personal Monkey King Luffy has now morphed into miscellaneous goop, just like this literal Monkey King warned us about a whole 4 chapters ago. And I suppose there's a couple of different ways we can go with this. 2 prominent directions being that this is Luffy's Devil Fruit awakening, and the other being that this is the true nature of Luffy's fruit, which may have a completely different name that was lost to the world because 5 old men couldn't be bothered to remember it. On the awakening side, there is a strong chance that Luffy is now able to access the same sort of abilities as Kanakuru's Devil Fruit, the power to not only do the stretching, but also almost mimic a Logia by being able to morph his body into a sort of liquid rubbery thing. Other options include the idea that Luffy's fruit isn't a paramecia at all. It could be a secret Logia, or even more question-markingly, a mythical Zoan. Some sort of Monkey King, perhaps even a Sun Wukong, and that stretching is only one of Luffy's abilities of the 72 powers that Sun Wukong allegedly possessed. It's pretty wild, but right now this could go in any direction. All we know is that the Goma Goma no Mi is not what it seems, because it is a fake name. And it may even function quite similarly to how Kaido's Devil Fruit theoretically works. The concept that upon eating it, all you get is the power to turn into a bit of a splishy, splashy little fishy, but after unlocking its true nature, you become an infinitely powerful alcoholic dragon. You know what I find weirdly interesting about this situation though? The idea that Basil Hawkins of all people may have been right. He famously predicted that Luffy's chances of survival were not great. However, this also happens to be like the one situation where that's kind of good news. But a lot of this does leave us with a ton of questions surrounding Joy Boy. Up until now, I had assumed that Joy Boy was less of an actual person and more of a title, something inherited by fated individuals over hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. But this cliffhanger has left us with the very real possibility that Joy Boy is a legit spirit, something that does exist in One Piece. Souls in the afterlife and the dead interacting with the living, and not exactly new ideas for this world. So there's a ton of explanations here, such as Joy Boy being housed within Luffy's fruit, perhaps even the Straw Hat itself, or Luffy just being a straight up reincarnation of Joy Boy, whose arrival was planned and predicted a whopping 800 years ago. And as much as I need all of these questions answered, what I want to see most right here and right now is Kaido's reaction. What is he going to do when he's confronted with the actual Joy Boy? Does he quite literally face the music and bow before the one who achieved everything he's strived for? Probably not, because that's a bit narratively boring. So instead, we probably have option 2, which is for Kaido to go through the 5 stages of grief. Firstly, being in denial of what's happening, then he might get a little bit upset in a way that I would describe as anger, followed by trying to make a bargain, maybe offering Luffy one last chance to join him so that they can be co-Joy Boys, then a deserved bout of depression, and finally, acceptance. I mean, Kaido might even turn this into 10 to 12 stages of grief if he adds in all of the drunken forms. He may even try to seduce Joy Boy with his flirtatious anime girl persona, who I believe has been named Kawaii. But Wano is finally starting to form a full circle and is without a doubt going to be the most impactful arc in the series to date. And whilst we're waiting to be smacked in the face with some more impact, here is another video, because there's always more to learn, explore, and experience with this wonderful series, so I look forward to seeing you there.